Can you hear me? Everybody hear me all right? Okay. Hello, my name is Alicia Wilson. I am the founder of New Life Second Chance Outreach. Thank you all so very much for attending this webinar. This webinar is a co-partnership presentation between New Life Second Chance Outreach as well and Georgia Justice Project. If you're on probation or work with those that are on probation, I'm confident that this webinar will succeed at informing you of your rights as a Georgia probationer, as well as inform you of your options during these challenging times. I would like to give you just a few housekeeping tips. This webinar is being recorded and participants can see your chat comments. Therefore, if you have a question for the attorney that is a personal question and you do not want others to be privy to, please hold your questions until the end of the presentation because the recording will be stopped right before the Q&A. However, please feel free to utilize the chat to comment as well as, comment with each other as far as the panelists and to make general comments in the chat. Also, links to resources and panelist contact info will also be listed in the chat occasionally. This presentation will be presented by Rachel Holmes. Rachel is a senior attorney at Georgia Justice Project, where she represents clients with pending criminal cases in Fulton and DeKalb County. She also represents returning citizens with violation of probations and detainer issues at Metro Reentry Facility. Prior to joining GJP, she worked as a public defender for 8 years. Thank you all for joining, and I'd like to turn everything over to Rachel right now. Thank you.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for attending. I want to give everybody a little bit of time to look at Alicia's slide and New Life and what they are doing at this time, so everybody can be familiar with them if they are not at this time. But as Ms. Wilson said, my name is Rachel Holmes. I'm an attorney at the Georgia Justice Project, and I'm hoping today to just kind of give everybody a little information on your rights while you are on probation. And some guidance for that. Also, we will be ending this with a Q&A, and if you have any questions, then at that point in time, please ask those questions. As Alicia said, this video is being recorded. We are very aware of everybody's privacy issues, and we want to make sure that everybody has a chance to change your Zoom display name at this time if you would like. This has been an open registration. Anybody that is interested in this has been able to register. So there are several different criminal justice actors involved. And so we want to give everybody a chance to change your display name if that is something that you want to do before asking any questions at this time. That will be remain available at that time. And then once we get to the Q&A, of course, we will never say anybody's name at that time, but you can ask questions then that will be a little more private and there will not be the recording. We're very glad to have everybody here today. Thank you for spending your evening with us, and we're hopeful that we can provide you some information. And I will hopefully get through this presentation in about 35 to 40 minutes, and then at that point in time, we'll have the Q&A. Just to give everybody a little information about the Georgia Justice Project, we have been around for over 34 years, and we handle several different things. As Ms. Wilson said, I handle criminal cases in Fulton and DeKalb County. We've been doing that for our entire 34 years. Other aspects that we handle and are involved in is education and outreach, and then reentry lawyering. Our reentry lawyering has a lot to do with our records cases, where we handle and try to restrict people's records. A lot of what's actually called expungement in several different places. We have successfully passed a bill this session, SB 288, which will allow some more misdemeanor cases to be able to be restricted. We also, as Ms. Wilson said, are involved in the Metro Reentry Facility, which is a prison in Metro Atlanta that is really advocating for reentry of returning citizens, where I help with detainers, so people that have pending cases that are still there, as well as people that have old violations of probation. So a lot of our work at Metro Reentry has kind of springboarded us into this really focusing on people that are on probation, especially during this time and with COVID. We've really understood that, and we want to make sure that there's somebody here that is advocating for people on probation during this time as well. So a little bit of what we're hoping for today is, like I said, we want to make sure everybody understands their rights while they're on felony probation. And this webinar will be focused mainly on felony probation, and that is because that is what is under the Department of Community Supervision, which you'll hear me probably say DCS several times, and that's what that is in relation to. Misdemeanor probation is a privatized probation for the most part, and so it's different. Every different private company has a different set of rules and what they are abiding by, and so that's not something that we are fully aware of, and each jurisdiction does handle it differently. So this is mainly discussing just about felony probation, but we do want to talk about reporting requirements. I'll talk about hardship waivers, especially if you're having issues with fines and fees, and make sure people are meeting their the special conditions and what that means. We are hoping we started this, like I said, meeting and having a best practices based off of what was going on with COVID-19 and during the pandemic. And we started meeting with different community justice actors, and we met with DCS, and we met with some Superior Court judges about what we think, how probation should be handled during COVID-19, and that was back in May. And we're still in this pandemic, and so what we want to do now is kind of really focus on seeing what's happening on the ground, right? We all know that what we're being told isn't always sometimes what happens in each different probation office. So with that, we really want to be able to speak to different people that are on probation and see how everything is going. And that's why we have this contact at the bottom, survey@gjp.org. Please email us if you would like to speak with an attorney or one of our social workers, and you'll be able to go through the survey. If you have specific questions and concerns about your actual probation and what's happening with your probation, if you're facing a probation violation, please email me at probation@gjp.org, and we can possibly start the process of being able to help you with that and go through the application process for GJP to possibly represent you. At the very least, we just want to speak to you and maybe be able to give you some advice on how to handle different situations. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is reporting to probation, and that is something that was honestly one of the most important things that you're doing while you're on probation, and that is why it says no matter what, you must report. While we've been talking to DCS, you know, that's the one thing that they are continually having you do, right? You will have to report to your community supervision officer, your CSO. I will say a lot of times just probation officer. But according to DCS, you will continue to have to report, but they're saying that you're only going to do it for specific reasons, and they're limiting some of their in-person reporting. This is what they're saying. This is what is on their website. What we want to know about if this is actually happening, and if it's correlating to that, and if you're concerned with any of your probation issues, and we want to talk about that. The reason why reporting is so important is because, you know, like I said, as I've been in the criminal defense field for over 10 years, almost every violation of probation, if it is something besides a new charge, has the non-reporting aspect to it. And that is because most of the time you will not be violated for not completing some type of condition. It's usually attached to a failure to report. And that's why it is so important to continue to report. It shows the accountability portion of to probation. As long as you're showing up, then you're most likely less likely to be violated. It's our understanding that most reporting right now is involved in the centralized reporting unit, which you call into it, and you go through a push button to answer different types of questions. But if your CSO is requiring you to report in person, that does cause concerns. What our advice would be is to submit a written request to your CSO explaining for whatever reason is causing you issues, whether or not it's health issues or financial issues that make that in-person reporting a problem. And be very specific. You know, if you're unable to report because you have a family member that is sick, you need to write that in writing. And why we say in writing is because it's very, very important for everyone to keep every type of form of communication with your probation officer. We want you to keep all emails, texts. If you call your probation officer, screenshot that. And keep that. Keep all emails, keep everything, because you want to be able to show that you've been able to report to probation, that you've made these requests to your probation officer. Because it's only that's going to be up to you to make sure that, right? Probation's not going to, if they don't have it, they're not going to be able to just come up with it, right? And sometimes you speak to a probation officer and then the probation officer changes and you're trying to tell the court system or your next probation officer what happened with your previous probation officer. And that can be really difficult if you don't have that in writing, if there's not a way for you to be able to show that. So what we're going to do right now is we're actually going to do a Zoom poll. We want to kind of see, everybody that's here, what's going on with your probation. And this is going to kind of help me know where we're at. So what I want you to do is if you're reporting to probation right now, tell us, are you reporting by call-in? Are you reporting by in-person? Are you doing remote reporting? Or are you on non-report right now and you don't actually have to report? And so right now, this is if you are on, if what's happening to you, you're reporting right now during COVID. I know that might have changed, and before you were handling it one way, but we want to know if it's changed right now, how you're handling probation right now. So I'm going to give everybody another couple, 20, 30 seconds to answer this. And also at this time, if there's anything specific to reporting that you want to ask about right now, please feel free to in the Q&A and we can see if we can answer that quickly. Do we have a question, Paige?
We have a raised hand.
Okay.
So I think if the individual who's raised their hand, if they want to type in their question to the Q&A, I can do it that way. I think alternatively, if you want to say the question yourself, we might be able to unmute you. It is your choice.
Looks like they are in call in. Let's see.
Okay, I unmuted myself. Okay, here's my question. I already appeared before the judge to try to get my restitution reduced. During COVID, I can't pay it. And so I'm in call-in probation. So when I called in, I spoke to the live person. I spoke to the probation officer. He told me, pay it if I can, but I can't. And so I'm feeling some kind of way because this man told me when I appeared before him, he didn't want to see me again, and he wouldn't even listen to my my situation then. I'm a 64-year-old woman. I'll be 65 this year. I'm only on Social Security, and he ordered me to pay $200 in restitution per month when I went to prison in 2015. So what should I do?
Yes, ma'am. So when it comes to restitution, I understand it looks like it sounds like you've already gone back to the judge. And a lot of times with restitution, unfortunately, it's not something that can be converted. And I'll get into this about what you can do to try to not have to pay some fines and fees and then get those converted community service hours. Unfortunately, that is not able to be done with the restitution. But all you can do is continue to pay what you can pay. You will not be revoked for non-payment. And I will say this again later, but they have to willfully show that you were unable to pay your restitution. So as long as that's why a lot of times you hear probation officer just say pay something. But it's really, unless they can willfully show you're not paying probation, then you won't be revoked. The issue comes though when people stop reporting because they're unable to pay, right? Like I heard, people say my probation officer told me if I didn't repay next month, then I was going to be revoked, so they don't show up the next month. Well, the time, the reason they get it revoked is because they didn't stop reporting, not because of the non-payment of the restitution. So I wish I could tell you that there's a way, you know, they're supposed to take in your ability to pay at the time when they decide restitution. But what I can tell you is it will not, you cannot be revoked for non-payment as long as you're not willfully not paying.
Okay.
And Rachel, I want to see if I can step up as well. I got out of prison in 2011, and I was actually on 25 years probation. I had restitution, fines, and fees, and at that time, Ms. Sumbry was my PO, and I had other POs who were not willing to work with you, and I ended up going over their head to their supervisor, and I explained to them I did not have income at that time. There was no way I could pay $200 a month, and I ended up writing letters, and I just basically asked them, you know, you can ask for basically a reprieve, to just ask them, you know, you have to pay restitution back, but you know, I cannot afford to pay $200. This is what I can afford. Are you willing to work with me? And sometimes they're willing to work with you if you can find the right one. So I would suggest you do that as well. Also, because I was unemployed, a lot of people do not know, you can also request that you have your actual monitoring fees completely waived. They charge you $35 to $55 a month just to monitor you. And if you're unemployed and you cannot pay for that, you can request that those fines, that your supervision fee, which is the $35 to $50, can be waived. And that can actually, you know, alleviate some of that relief as well.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Wilson. And that really goes into quite a good segue into our next topic that we're going to talk about, which is fines and fees. Exactly those issues that you guys were talking about. Unfortunately, kind of goes hand in hand with exactly how we're talking. Unfortunately, restitution is treated differently than fines and fees under probation. But for the fines and fees, which is it ranges anywhere from $32 to $50 for your monthly probation fee. But that, as well as the fines, whatever fines you were given as part of your sentence, those at all can be converted into community service, or you can ask for the hardship exemption waiver. Unfortunately, like I said, restitution cannot be converted. So if you're unable to pay your fines and fees, like I said, you must continue to report to probation. That is very, very important, but you can ask for a hardship waiver. And like I said earlier, failure to pay on probation is only if that is not if it's willfully not paying on probation, which is different than just being unable to pay. But this goes back to exactly what I was saying about, put it in writing, explain exactly why you're unable to pay, explain what you're making. They're going to want to know, why it is that you're unable to pay. So if you give them that information, unfortunately, I know that can be very private, and it's a lot of work sometimes, but you want to lay out why you're unable to pay at this point in time. And I really want to stress to you, if you hear at some point in time, if you hear it, contact me, but also if you hear at some point in time, if you do not report to probation, or if you do not pay at your next time, then it will put out a violation of probation. Please still report, even if you do not have that money. The amount of times that I've seen where that has happened and the person does not show up, and then the violation's the not reporting. It's not the failure to pay, but it's the not reporting. That's what judges care about. Judges look at probation a lot like they look at accountability course. Like, as long as you're showing up and you're trying to do something, whether that's try to pay, then you're going to be able to stay on probation and they're not going to revoke you. It's that when you stop reporting that the biggest problems happen. Here's how to ask for a hardship waiver. So which is a one-page application that you need to ask your probation officer for. And if you have been able to get the one-page application, we ask that you if you have a copy of that, to email us at probation@gjp.org, because unfortunately we don't have that application to hand out to you guys, but we would like to be able to do that. But once you have that application, then you have to complete that application and return it to your CSO. If they do not agree that you get a hardship exemption waiver, then you can appeal that decision. And that's what you can go up the chain of command to the district director with DCS. And then if that doesn't work, you can also file a request back to the sentencing court to have your probation fees waived. And if you know, the other option is to always get them converted to community service and work them off as well. But you need to be aware that the fines and fees do continue to accrue during this time, so you need to be you need to do this as soon as it becomes an issue to be able to pay. So like we said, please, while you're contacting them, do write anything that you have, any financial issues, any health reasons that you do that had affected your ability to pay during this time. And again, document all of your requests. Every time you've requested to convert the fines to community service, take a note of that, right? Because what you're trying to do really right now is you're trying to make it where if you're unable to pay, right, and you're taken back in front of the judge at some point in time, which we hope nobody is, but if that happens, you want to be able to show that it wasn't willful, right? Like I knew I wasn't able to pay. I requested a hardship exemption. I requested to convert this to community fines this many times. I did it on this day, and here's something that shows that. You want to be able to show that because you're backing yourself up. And, so keep documentation also of all payments you've had. You don't want a payment to be made that doesn't show up later. You want to be able to make sure you have all of that. So, and yes, any fine can be converted to community service. Now the judge has to sign off on it. You have to, show that you're unable to pay it. But any fine that's not restitution can be converted to community service hours, and you can work it off. They'll usually convert like a certain amount at a time and kind of move forward at that point in time. So we're going to do another Zoom poll, and this will give you some guys a chance to answer the question. And then after that, we'll also answer some questions right now about fines and fees. So we want to know, have you applied for a hardship waiver since the COVID-19 pandemic began? And if you didn't, is that because you just now heard about it, unfortunately, and you were never offered that? Is it because you don't need it and you're able to pay your fines and fees? Yes, have you requested one, but I know sometimes you don't hear back from your probation officers? Yes, but you were denied one, or did you ask for one and your probation officer told you not to worry about it because they're not worried about you paying your fines right now? And I want to bring up that last one. I've had some clients, had similar situations, and your fines and your fees can still accrue, right? So you still need to push for that hardship exemption, because if you don't get it, then your probation fees could continue to accrue, and then they're going to be asking for it, and they're going to say, well, you're this far behind, right? So, but you ask for exemption, a waiver, then you're not going to be behind once you are able to start paying again. All right. Do we have any questions specifically about fines and fees right this second? If not, we can also take them at the end once we do stop the recording. Give everybody about another 15-20 seconds to answer the poll question. All right. Looks like most of you don't need it, so that's good. If you didn't know about it, absolutely continue to ask your probation officer about it now. And if you asked your one, you were told not to, I would go back and ask for it and say you're concerned about them accruing and that you don't want to have to deal with that in the future. And let's see. Here are the poll results. All right. The last topic that we're going to discuss before going into the Q&A is avoiding violations. So there's a couple different types of violations that can happen. One is obviously if there's a new case, a new charge, a new arrest, that can be a violation. There's also, though, technical violations, and that's kind of more of what we're going to be discussing today. Technical violations are one that means that you've violated, or your probation officer is saying you violated either a general or a special condition. General conditions are, just reporting to probation and paying your fines and fees. Special conditions are things that were specifically told to you that you have to complete while you're probation that is specific to your case. And that can be something, and I'll show you some more information, something specific to either substance use evaluation, treatment, anything like that, completing your GED, those type of things can be it. And what I want to discuss about these different types of violations is that special conditions have a greater impact on your violations of probation. They can violate your probation for a longer period of time, and they can actually take, if you violate your special condition of probation, your entire probation balance, whatever you've left on probation, can be revoked, and you can spend the rest of the time in custody. So that's why these special conditions are so important. As what the DCS is saying is they will continue to allow for officer discretion in determining whether or not somebody can reasonably expect to comply with all conditions during this time. Like I said, that's GED, AA, other types of meetings. So really, we want to make sure that people understand that if you're unable to complete a special condition right now, you need to speak to your probation officer about why that's unable to be done. I know a lot of times in sentences it says you must complete, do 90 AA meetings in 90 days. You must complete so much community service within 120 days. You must complete a program within the first 6 months. Whatever it is, a time frame is continuing on. And so if probation gave you a time limit, a time frame that you need to complete something by, you really need to speak to them about why that is unable to, why you're unable to do that. And if they tell you that they grant it, make sure you have that in writing. Again, make sure you have everything in writing that says, yes, I've been told that I can do this in a longer period of time. If they don't allow you to, and you're unable to complete it, then I would you want to have that in writing that you've asked, you've been denied, and then you can still go back to the citizen court. So the judge is the one that gave you those special conditions. The judge is the one that allowed that time for the frame. So you can go back to the judge and ask for those. And if that is something that you're concerned at, again, please email me at probation@gjp.org, and we'll see what we can do to try to help you with that, to make sure that your request is granted and that you're safe and you feel safe while completing these different special conditions. It's our understanding that DCS is allowing for different ways for these to be completed during this time. But if there's any issues with that, please let us know. So like I said, we spoke to DCS back in May of this year, and we were told that they were not going to be pursuing technical warrants. And what that means is that at this point in time, the DCS is not pursuing technical warrants for technical violations, which means that if you're in violation, there's not going to be a warrant for you right now. But that doesn't mean that it's not going to be coming afterwards, which is why it continues to be important to make sure that you're still reporting and that you're still abiding by those conditions. And if you're not, that you're doing it so in writing. We are under a judicial emergency right now, which is why that these technical warrants are being executed right now, because there's no way to have court dates for those. But my concern is I don't want to be a flood of them after the judicial emergency is lifted. But you still have to follow your conditions, and one thing we want to make note on is that if there is stay away orders, no contact provisions, if you're supposed to be on house arrest, all this stuff is still things that you have to abide by at this time. And if those are negatively affecting your ability to either secure housing, get medical treatment, reach out to us and we can see what we can do and advocate on your behalf to see how to be able to for you to be able to, have a place to live still and still be able to abide by these different conditions that you're put under at this time. So I'm going to kind of move on pretty quickly because I want to make sure that there's a lot of time for the Q&A, because I know everybody that is here has a lot of specific questions and we want to be able to get to them. But what I want to continue to say is that while you have these special conditions, the general conditions, where they will violate your probation, so you have to continue to abide by them as best as you can and keep up with everything that you're doing. make sure that you document everything that you're doing. And that way, hopefully, when this pandemic is over, or we're able to get back to some type of normalcy, everything that you've been working on the probation officer will have that. Your probation officer can change at any time, and that's why it's always very important for you to keep all the information. You are your best advocate, especially while you're on probation. You're the one that has to show everything that you've done, and so I'm talking everything. If you have an email address where you keep everything, take pictures of every time that you meet with probation, you want to have all that stuff documented, so you'll be able to go back at any point of time and show what a good probationer you are. And part of the reason that you want to be able to do that is, Georgia gives extremely long sentences on probation. And hopefully at some point in time you can get off that probation and maybe do an early termination of probation, or maybe you have a behavioral incentive date, which is something that has recently been added that will allow you to get off of probation, possibly allow you to get off of probation after 3 years of probation, depending on the type of sentence that you have. But all that is if you're doing well on probation and you can show that you've been doing well on probation and that you no longer need to be supervised while you're on probation. So we are going to do one last poll, and this is going to be about special conditions. We want to know if you've had to complete community service during COVID. Are you participating in any classes or treatment during COVID? And have you been asked for a drug screen during this time? And so we'll allow some people to ask this. We do want to know if people are being required to go into probation and give drug screens. I know a lot of people are supposed to be completing community service. I know it can be difficult to do at this point in time. So we want to make sure of that and make sure that you have the ability to handle what you need to handle while you're on probation. So I'm going to give about another 30 seconds of this, and then we're going to talk a little bit about voting. And then after that, we will begin the Q&A. There will be a lot more information on the last 2 slides about ways to contact us and ways to handle some different probation situations. And so we will definitely get to all of that shortly. I'll give you all just a couple more minutes to complete this polling. Right, it looks like most people are not having to do community service during this time, which is good. So people do have to complete in classes, but no one has been asked for drug screening. That's good. I have heard that has happened, so I'm glad that this group has not had that situation yet. So we all know how important it is to vote. Right now. And so what I want to make people aware of is that you do have the ability to vote once you're off of paper. And once you can get your off of paper, even if you have a prior conviction, you are able to vote. We do have somebody with us, Johnny Kaufman from NPR. We're gonna unmute him for a minute and let him speak to you a little bit about what his work is with NPR and voting and felony disenfranchisement.
Hey everyone, my name's Johnny. Like was said, thanks to Miss Wilson and the Georgia Justice Project for having me on tonight. I'll just be real quick. Excuse me. I cover voting and racial injustice in Georgia, and I'm working on stories right now for the next few months ahead of the election about people who can't vote because of felony convictions. The obstacles they face, some of the complications of that, and the issues with that. So I think this is something that's not talked about enough. There's a lot of confusion about it, and there's this whole racist history to the fact that people can't vote if they have felony convictions in Georgia, if they're still on paper, as well as public officials who need to be held accountable for these policies. So I have a few months to work on this, and that gives me time to tell stories in compassionate, thoughtful way. At least that's my goal. So I'd love to hear from folks about how felony disenfranchisement has affected them. If they have personal stories about that, if there are other issues related to this that I should be paying attention to as a journalist, that I should get the word out about. And I'm also here as a resource if you have questions or you need help figuring something out. If you're confused, I can be a resource. Love to hear from people in all different circumstances. If you face a really long probation sentence, if you've completed your time on probation, but you still owe fines, fees, or restitution, really anyone who's dealing with this, I'm here to listen. And just because you talk to me doesn't mean your story is going to go out everywhere. That's not the case at all. The more information I get from people who are affected by this, the better I can answer questions and figure out how everything works. So I think maybe some of my information was put in the chat. You can call or text me anytime. You can email me. There's also a form in there. If you don't want to call or text me, you can fill out that form. That'll be helpful to me. Or if you want to get in touch, of course, with the folks at the Justice Project more about this, that is totally fine too. I'm not a substitute for them. But just if you feel like you want to talk to someone and express some feelings about this, or you have stories to share, please get in touch. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Johnny. So like I said, before we get to the Q&A, we want to kind of give you guys a couple different options of some additional support. So if you feel that you're being required to comply with your probation in any way that compromises your health and safety, we're going to put in the location finder at the bottom of the chat, but reach out to coordinating chief and tell them what's going on. Go up the chain of command, just like Ms. Wilson said. If you're unable to, if you're not on felony probation, you're on misdemeanor probation, reach out to your probation office, and if that doesn't work, you can fill out the citizen complaint form that is from the Misdemeanor Oversight Committee with DCS, and fill that out. Like I said, if you would like to share your experience while you're on probation during this time, please email GJP at survey@gjp.org. If you email us with your contact information and your name, somebody from our organization will be in touch with you to go through the survey and to ask you the questions. If you have any concerns about what's going on with your felony probation, there's something specific that you want to ask that doesn't get answered in here, please email probation@gjp.org. Now, here's this kind of information on how to refer someone to GJP. And I'm going to leave this up here while we're doing the Q&A, so you can write down any information that you need from it. But what I do want to point out is the early terminations of probation. This is something new that GJP is really expounding on. And if you feel that that is something that you're looking for an early termination, please reach out to us and we can see if we can possibly help you with that early termination. It is something that you can go through your probation officer and ask them for. And a lot of times I've heard they'll say, you need an attorney to file something with the court. And we'll see if we can help you with that and see if we're able to advocate for you on that behalf for an early termination of probation, because we fully understand how long probation sentences are given in Georgia. All right, so at this point in time, I'm going to bring Paige back on, and we're going to see if we can answer some of your Q&As. We will stop recording at this point in time, so feel free to use the Q&A. And we'll also try to check the chat as well. Popping up, but you have our email, probation@gjp. If you have any specific issues, survey@gjp.org. If we'd love to get some more information from you guys about how things are going on with probation. We really are thankful for everybody coming to this webinar. We hope that it was able to provide some valuable information. Please do continue to reach out with us and stay in touch with us. And I hope that everybody has a good evening. And we're going to allow the chat to remain for about another 60 seconds while we're I will minimize myself so that way you guys can collect all the information that we have put out on the chat and copy and paste it to whatever you need, so you do have that information. We will send out this PowerPoint to everybody that has registered. In the next couple of days, you should be able to have that information as well. Thank you guys and have a good evening.
Can you put the link back in the chat again for the hardship application?
And I am answering one question real quick just by chat.